Creating a purpose-driven environment, what great organizations know and do to energize and engage their employees. The details coming up next. Hi everyone, Dennis Gilbert. Today I want to talk with you about the difference between purpose-driven employees and what we often know as paycheck-only employees. So let's begin by exploring the differences between a paycheck-only employee and those that are purpose-driven. When we think about the term or definition of paycheck-only, what that typically refers to are the employees that come to work seeking only a paycheck in return. They're very motivated or very energized, specifically about their paycheck. They're often very time conscious. So in other words, how much time do they have on the clock during a given day? And then also, where is my paycheck? Often in seminars or workshops that I deliver, I may ask people about motivation, and specifically about workplace motivation. And often I may ask them, what brings you to work every day? What motivates you or inspires you to come to work every day? And it's not uncommon that someone will give me the money crisp sign. They'll indicate that their paycheck or their money, their compensation is what motivates or drives them to come to work every day. And of course, many of us would agree that the paycheck is very important. My argument typically with those people in the workshops is that while the paycheck is very important, probably in everyone's top three, it likely is not number one. And often there may be some polite debate or some polite argument that the paycheck is number one. But I tend to disagree. Because if the paycheck was really number one, why wouldn't we go to a competitor across the street for 50 cents more per hour, $1 more per hour, or $10 more per hour? Of course, there's probably some magical number there that may make us go to a competitive environment. But in most cases, a small variance in our paycheck is not going to drive us to go to a competing company to do similar work. There may be factors such as job security and also the idea of our friendliness, our coworkers and other employees who we establish professional business relationships with that we simply don't want to disregard for some small nominal change in pay. But the paycheck employee is not really focused on what is their purpose in the organization. And so as part of this segment, we really want to explore what are those differences? The differences between a purpose-driven employee and a paycheck-only employee. So when we think about that and we think about purpose-driven would indicate obviously something other than the paycheck. And it's about things like those workplace relationships. It's about what brings us to work every day. What is our sense of accomplishment? How does the work that we perform tie into the goals or the objectives, not only for the hour, the day, or the week, or month, or year, but overall, how does our contribution matter? And when we have a feeling that our contribution doesn't matter that much, or the organization doesn't care about me, so I don't in turn care about the organization, we end up becoming very paycheck driven. And so we want to think about becoming more purpose driven. So the culture of the organization and the culture of the organizational leaders really has a significant impact on whether that business or organization will have more purpose-driven employees or more paycheck-only employees. This is true in nearly every business sector, including sectors such as healthcare that involves the care and treatment or healing of patients. It's true in heavy manufacturing, light industrial manufacturing, or light industrial applications. It's even true in the traditional white collar areas of business, would include positions such as banking or architects or sales professionals. All of those industry sectors or classifications are subject to having either purpose-driven or paycheck only. It may even include some other sectors that we don't often think about, sectors such as retail or various nonprofits, trade associations, organizations that are membership centered and also nonprofit centered. So all of those areas are potential areas where either they're purpose-driven or they're paycheck only. So let's talk about a few identifiers that may contribute to a culture of the unwanted or less desirable paycheck only. There may be organizations with the following characteristics. Organizations where management team members are never available. Organizations where value systems disregard or disrespect customer expectations. Those that have a lack of consideration for safety or welfare of employees and their customers. Organizations that tend to have buddy systems for promotion, raises, or for showing favoritism. Organizations that have ever-changing policies and procedures that signal distrust in employees or distrust in employees' contributions or efforts to that business or that team. Organizations that have the feeling of, you don't care about me, so I don't care about you. Of course, there are many more indicators of these types of organizations, but that certainly represents a great starting point. So what may be required for many organizations is a cultural shift. Sometimes organizations have to shift from a specific tradition, behaviors, value systems, all of those cultural identifiers that drive employees either to be purpose-driven or paycheck only. So let's talk for a couple of minutes just to clarify some of the elements that are important about purpose. The number one element that's important about purpose is that an employee's purpose ties directly into that organization's mission. So we often may talk about the mission statement of an organization. And of course, the mission statement is some kind of a written document, some written verbiage that expresses the purpose of that organization. It often includes that organization's values and belief systems and typically ties into what that organization does. Does it produce a good, a product, or is it more service oriented? And of course, the customers that are then connected with that organization. So often when I talk with groups about mission statements, many, of course, of the higher ranking top level director, VP, etc., in large organizations are very familiar with mission statement. But some organizations, especially those that may be smaller, are perhaps not so familiar with what a mission statement really is or what its true purpose is. So a mission statement is typically 150 words or less. We can find mission statements in employee handbooks. Sometimes they're posted on a bulletin board near the Human Resources Department or some other location within the company. Sometimes they may appear on other company documents. things that the company publicizes, things that the company puts out for the public to review, see, and understand. Mission statements are not slogans. The slogan may appear on a handout or a giveaway. They may appear on a tablet or a pen or some other type of giveaway. They may even appear on some flyers, promotional flyers for sales, or even they may appear on help wanted ads or job opportunities. But typically those short blurbs, one sentence, maybe even a fragmented sentence, is typically representative of a slogan, not of a mission statement. So when an organization has an effective, well-crafted mission statement that truly identifies what the purpose of that organization is, the types of products or goods or services they're trying to provide to their customers, and that linkage between customer and sometimes even vendors are important for the mission statement. It may also be important to recognize things related to the environment or to safety. Other things that are values of that organization are important. Once the mission statement is crafted, it's important that that mission statement is shared throughout all levels of the organization. When we consider a startup organization, one with maybe 2 or 3 employees, pretty much everyone knows what each other is doing. They have an idea of what their purpose is, what their job roles are, what their duties are, and how all of their actions and behaviors tie into what that organization represents. As organizations grow over some period of time, they may grow into 25 employees, 50, a couple of hundred, maybe even thousands or tens of thousands of employees. As the organization grows and develops, it becomes much more difficult to share that mission statement down to all levels of the organization. Of course, the more senior management typically has a pretty good feel for this, and many of the sales or other high performance occupations, the marketing people, advertising people, people that are public, in the public view of that organization, typically know a lot about the mission statement, but it's not always passed down or handed down to all levels of the organization. And often this becomes the missing link. This becomes the difference between a purpose-driven employee and those that are only seeking their paycheck. And it's because they lack those ties. They lack the understanding of how they're truly connected to that organization that make them develop the feeling of, oh, gee, you don't care about me, so I in turn don't care about you. And by the way, where's my paycheck? So managers, directors, whatever title you want to give the leaders of the organization, it's important for them to keep in mind that they have to drive the purpose of that organization down to all levels and spread horizontally throughout that organization. If they don't, the employees won't develop that feeling of purpose. And it's important for every position, even those positions that you may view or consider as the lower ranking or lowest ranking positions. We may sometimes think of positions in areas of cleanliness, somebody who dusts the shelves or vacuums the floor, or even some maintenance type positions that maybe replace a worn out light bulb or something along those lines. Sometimes, not always, because I don't mean to certainly disrespect any workplace position, but sometimes those positions are viewed as some of the more lower ranking or not as important positions. But in fact, today, most organizations don't have the luxury of having some extra employees, some employees that are just lingering around, waiting to be called into action. There may be some, but there are very few. Most organizations have work related to every job position that they have on the payroll. and that is either a part-time or full-time job. Regardless, that position has a purpose, and the purpose of that position needs to tie back into that organization's mission statement. So when we consider something like the cleanliness or appearance of the facilities or the building, all of those things make a statement about what that organization is, what that organization does, and perhaps more importantly, who they are. So when purpose-driven employees are active in the workplace, when that mission statement has been shared and sent down and spread horizontally throughout all levels of the organization, when those cultural identifiers are in the positive areas, not focused in the negative areas, that's when the organization will truly develop a culture of purpose-driven employees. So we've already talked about several cultural identifiers for organizations that may be struggling with having purpose-driven employees or having a purpose-driven environment. Let's take a moment and talk about some key indicators or some cultural identifiers that are really important or relevant for those organizations seeking to become more purpose-driven. From my experience, organizations become purpose-driven when they invite change and expect it. In a world of constant change, the riskiest place is to be stuck in the status quo. Organizations become purpose-driven when they are inclusive in decision-making and problem-solving, when they build upon the contributions of all team members. Organizations become purpose-driven when they balance their focus between success and accomplishments while also solving problems to continually improve. They become purpose-driven when the workplace chatter is about business growth and includes all team members in that vision. They become purpose-driven when they emphasize and respect the customer and employees with empathy, support, and demonstrated value. Of course, this list, once again, is not all-inclusive, but if an organization is able to capitalize on many of those points just referenced, they'll certainly be pointed in the right direction to become more purpose-driven. Do you believe your organization is already purpose-driven? How do you know? In addition to embracing the indicators already mentioned, some additional features or indicators that would identify your organization as truly purpose-driven would include having low levels of energy-zapping gossip, having a supportive climate of communication instead of defensive, exhibiting an emphasis on getting started, jumping in, and completing tasks, having succession plans and career paths for employees, having knowledge of the competencies required for jobs, knowing who the role models are, and how to model exemplary performance. Last, but certainly not the least, is having high levels of customer satisfaction. Having high levels of customer satisfaction is paramount to having a purpose and performance-driven organization. When you consider having high levels of customer satisfaction, you have to ask yourself, how do you measure those levels of customer satisfaction? I'll often ask clients, how do you know that you have high levels of customer satisfaction? And in many cases, they'll smile and maybe chuckle a little bit and indicate to me that if they have a customer who has a problem, they certainly know it, implying or indicating that the customer may approach them rather assertively, and of course they're made aware of all customer dissatisfaction issues. But in fact, what many organizations consider as having good customer satisfaction is really only based upon those customers that actually provide them with feedback. So sometimes the question has to be, how do you draw out feedback from your customers? How do you know that your customers are very satisfied? Because in some cases, very meek customers or those who don't like to complain a lot, they may simply take their business elsewhere. They may never report some dissatisfaction or some problem. Or perhaps they may take a few dissatisfaction moments and let them build up and accumulate until they finally take their business somewhere else. Of course, the opposite of that, we have highly assertive customers who may complain regularly, loudly, and certainly let us know the areas that we have for performance improvement. The golden rule about customer satisfaction is to continue to ask yourself, how do we measure customer satisfaction? What are the ways that we reach out and connect with as many customers as we possibly can? Because again, those meek customers may never complain. They may just take their business elsewhere. Purpose-driven organizations have supportive and change-ready employees. This often includes those who may be identified as resistors to change. While they may lack support, they do help everyone think about the change and ensure that the team is on the right path. Of course, this list is not all-inclusive. There are many other items that could be included. Some of this will depend on each unique organizational culture, the type of business or business sector, and may even be driven by social economic conditions, seasonality, and world trends. We've talked about the differences between purpose-driven environments and those that are more oriented towards paycheck only. Let's take a look back at a few identifiers. We discussed cultural identifiers for paycheck-only environments. We explored the ideas of management team members who are never available, value systems that disregard or disrespect, environments where there is a lack of consideration for safety or welfare of employees and customers, the idea of buddy systems for favoritism, raises, or promotions, ever-changing policies and procedures, especially those that may indicate or tend to create a feeling of mistrust or lack of commitment or loyalty by the employees or the customers. And of course, the idea that you don't care about me, so I don't care about you. All of these indicators may be indicators more focused on the paycheck-only environment. But we've also explored indicators that are more purpose-driven. We explored the idea that purpose-driven environments invite change and expect it, are inclusive during decision-making, and make a conscious effort to build on the ideas and values of fellow employees. They balance their focus between both challenges and successes, not focusing too much on weaknesses, but building on natural talent. We noted that observations of workplace chatter are about growth and success, and that purpose-driven environments have strong respect for both the customer and employees. We also considered those people and organizations that truly believe that they are already very purpose-driven. So we looked at things like organizations having low levels of energy zapping gossip, having a supportive climate of communication instead of defensive, exhibiting an emphasis on getting started, jumping in, and completing tasks, having succession plans and career paths for employees, having a working knowledge of the competencies required for jobs, knowing who the role models are, and how to model exemplary performance. And perhaps most important, having an outstanding culture that fosters strong relationships with customers and consistently has high customer satisfaction ratings. Purpose-driven organizations are highly competitive. They exhibit success, and they have employees that tell everyone about the great place where they work. Purpose-driven organizations have employees that are very motivated. And when we consider the idea of workplace motivation, a couple of thoughts come to mind. We can motivate employees either through fear or inspiration, or to say it another way, through punishment or reward. So when we think about, for example, punishment or reward, that may be the idea of, if you follow our lead, if you do what's required, we'll give you some reward. If you don't, you may get fired. So that's sort of the concept between punishment and reward, fear or inspiration. And truly motivated employees are those employees who are inspired. The sort of strange or scary part about this concept is that when we consider the idea of punishment versus reward, it's often the same way that people may train their dog. They may give the dog a treat for good performance. They may give the dog a treat if he or she learns to sit, stay, speak, roll over, etc. And it's also the same way that people work with laboratory mice. They may give them some reward when they exhibit a certain behavior or follow a desired path. So I'm not suggesting, of course, that anybody in the workplace is either a dog or a laboratory mouse, but I am suggesting that people are energized. People are purpose-driven. They're energized when they're purpose-driven, and they do that by being inspired. And they don't do that when they're in fear or when they're facing punishment. When they're facing fear or punishment, they tend to develop more of the mindset of being paycheck only. Purpose-driven is typically easier in lower headcount organizations. Because they are small, there is less opportunity for gaps in cultural messages or belief systems. Fewer gaps means less people on the fence. Less people on the fence means fewer join the negative, paycheck-only side. Larger organizations may sometimes have to work harder to ensure the cultural identifiers and belief systems are positioned to be purpose-driven. While there may always be some small pockets of employees who are unsure of their purpose, the more effort that goes into communicating both mission and purpose, the greater the chance for cultural success. It is not uncommon that even very seasoned long-term employees may challenge the concept between paycheck only and purpose-driven, especially when they have witnessed firsthand changes in leadership, cyclical ups and downs, economic conditions during both strong and weak times. These employees are also typically viewed as the role model by those joining your organization. While these more seasoned employees are sometimes the voice of negativity, effectively managing the ideology of those employees can make them the positive role model you need. Like most workplace issues, having a purpose-driven environment as compared to a paycheck-only environment is not always simple. Having the ability to shift, change, pivot, or alter the culture of your environment or your organization will certainly have you facing many challenges. In the end, organizations that practice those identifiers or those indicators that are representative of more purpose-driven environments will have much more success than those who do not. Let's end with a closing quote. Leadership is not about your success, it is about their success.